any listener of this podcast wants to hear the silver bullet. What's the playbook? What was the
Absolutely.
messaging, right? What
Yeah,
lead gen company did you use? What AI tool are you using nowadays that does it all for you? But you can't beat reputation
absolutely.
in life. Honestly, we've grown every year for the past 9 years, and it's because as we've been growing organically, we've been building the systems. But I think we've done it in the right way. Our lost ratio is so small that when we lose something, it's typically because the client has done it themselves. Very rarely is it because they chose someone else.
Hi, Nikki, and welcome to Newell Studios podcast. We're obviously super excited to have you on. I know a ton about you, and of course, we've done our introduction, but just for the purpose of the listeners, do you want to give a quick high level of how you've ended up to where you are today, and then we can dive straight in?
Sure. So great to be on. Good to see you again. So Nicki Paterson, I'm the Chief Growth Officer of Solutions Driven. Solution Driven are a global hiring partner. So we do executive search, we do embedded recruitment in over 60 countries.
Insane.
I think it's insane. I've actually now been here almost 9 years, which is crazy. Before that, my previous life was in pro football or at some point soccer because I spent 12, 13 years of my career out in North America. So quite an interesting journey, I suppose, from thinking you're going to be a a sports person and all of a sudden you're kind of running a global recruitment company. But yeah, it's been a hell of a ride.
That's insane. The we can dive into like the comparison between athleticism, competition, and then go to market. I mean, I think they're literally the same actual role. But before we get into all of that, talk us through kind of 9 years. Where did you start? Did you start like was it a small company and did you grow it? Let's hear that story because I did a similar story, but only like 3 to 4 years, and then I just couldn't go anymore. So 9 years is a good stint if you started from the ground up.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, 9 and a little bit years ago, I was in a what the hell am I going to do next, right? I had what I think was a pretty cool career in football, and then all of a sudden I had a child, and one day later I tore my ACL in a practice match, and all of a sudden it was what are you going to do next? I was in 6 months of recovery. I did play one more year at that point, but something wasn't quite right. My wife started to get a little bit homesick, first grandkid, and we found ourselves back in Scotland, right? And thinking about what I was going to do next. I was trying to play football with my weaker foot, which I tried to do for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And actually, right before joining Solution Driven, I got the opportunity to work at Monster. I had a lot of friends that used to be at Yale and been through that whole Yellow Pages, which was very go to market, let's say. And a lot of them had ended up in Monster. That was a super successful Glasgow office, made a
Nice.
lot of money, still know a lot of people there. Actually just met the old CEO, Jeff Taylor, not long ago, who started the whole Monster brand. Um, but after a few months, I knew it wasn't quite right for me, just smashing the phones, 8 hours a day. And I was approached actually by the old kind of head of the Glasgow office for Yale, who was the sales director at Solutions Driven, to say, hey, why don't you come to recruitment? And I was like, my wife actually had been in recruitment HR related roles for quite a long time, and she told me I would hate it. And yeah, I don't know. I ended up meeting the guy. I met the CEO of Solution Driven, Gavin. I met his dad, who started the company almost 30 years ago.
So good.
And it was them. It was 100% one conversation with each of them, particularly Gavin at that time, that I was like, these guys are trying to do something different. They're in a very crowded market, which is sales, which is recruitment. And it just sounded a really, mature environment for me to be in. So where did I start? I started as almost just a kind of a new business salesperson.
Nice.
Um, but what Gavin really wanted was somebody to grow our US market. Even at that point, 9 years ago, the US was maybe 10, 15% of our revenue, but 70% of our clients.
That's insane.
So we had an opportunity. It was sitting there that we just hadn't fully capitalized on. We were working in 50 something countries at the time, like right across, UK, EMEA, into APAC. We'd had 11 entities over the years, basically someone said, can you help us fill 400 roles here? We figured out a way of doing it. Not me, but the team before me. And when I joined, there was 30 people in a Glasgow office that spoke 15 languages. And it was one of those. I'm like, how did they assemble this group of people? And almost they went and done a project. They were very, you know, not a gloating company, not attending all the events and the award
Yeah.
seasons, but they patted themselves in the back and they said, what else can we help you with? And the referrals kept coming and coming. And honestly, this business grew for the first 20 years just organically by doing a really good job, having processes, having methodology, and being good people, and hiring well for themselves. And over the last 9 years, we're now over double that, but the US is now 45-50% of our revenue. So it's been a pretty cool journey.
That's insane, right? Because like I speak to a lot of like founders and CROs, and there's two arguments. One is like you can't predictably scale through word of mouth and referrals because it's like almost impossible. But actually, I'm kind of more on the other side. I'm like, if you over deliver for your customer, you look at your customer as in, okay, we need to get a referral out of them, a customer testimonial, we need to make sure they're happy, blah, 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 blah. You can actually create a process where you can actually scale pretty aggressively. It's not so much X input's going to bring Y output.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting one because now I'm learning and hearing, and the more I'm doing this podcast, is so many people grew organically within like the first 5 to 10 years before they even leveraged like paid media or outbound
Yeah.
strategies.
Yeah, I mean, what I think's any listener of this podcast wants to hear the silver bullet. What's the playbook? What was the messaging, right? What
Yeah,
lead gen
for me.
company did you use? What AI tool are you using nowadays that does it all for you? But you can't beat reputation
Absolutely.
in life, right? I mean, if you think about your best friend, you've been introduced through someone, right? You didn't just put an advert up and you got a best friend the next day,
True.
right? Again, right? So it's, for me, I think I was super, super lucky because I came in when there was a foundation built.
Nice.
And but what I think I did help with is raise the ambition levels of maybe what was possible. And this isn't to downplay anyone else that was on the current sales team, but there was a lot of comfortability there, right? There was people that had worked in Glasgow, lived in Glasgow, and when they got the odd role in the US or Germany or something, they were buzzing, right? But I was always like, Gavin's winning some bigger things, right? And he's our CEO. How can I aim to be him, not the sales team? And immediately all I done, and it probably was stupid at the time, but worked out, was rather than picking one, because we work right across them, right? So there's
Right.
lots of a ton of tech, right, and loads of innovation and transformation in all the manufacturing and industrial clients or life science companies that we work with. But typically somebody, when it comes to recruitment or or sales, right, is really, really good at an industry. They've got a knowledge there, they've got a black book, they've got a network. I had nothing, not a thing. So my game plan at the time was, who are our top 20 clients and who are their 5 biggest competitors, and that's my 100 hit list.
So good.
And how can I get 5 contacts at each of those, and I'll just religiously go after those 500 people. And I won something like 20 something clients in the first year, and everybody was like, holy shit, like what's going on? He's done double what we've done, and we've been here for a few years. Rather than be an asshole about it, I was humble about it, and actually I felt that, I don't know if this again goes back to the sports thing, it was about best practice sharing, because there was still loads I could learn from them. I was
100%.
a kind of a winning pass in the early days, and then I realized to be successful, land and expand was the way forward. And it was so much easier to get role 2, 3, 4, 5 or introduction 2, 3, 4, 5 off of person one than it was to keep getting person one.
That's what I preach.
You know?
That's literally what I preach. We did this like 5 hour offsite internal yesterday, but it was virtual because I couldn't get out to New York. And like I spent an hour talking about that literal topic because it's so, so important. And it's like we don't realize you just need to find like the next part and the next pain, right? But just going back to that, if you scaled organically for those like for that length of time, right now, when you look at today's go-to-market landscape within the company, do you have any kind of like lead diversification, or are you solely just growing organically, or have you now put in the systems playbooks to kind of scale and diversify that top line?
Honestly, we've grown every year for the past 9 years, and it's because as we've been growing organically, we've been building the systems. But I think we've done it in the right way. If I go back, I think my first 2 or 3 years were really successful through hard work. right? And a couple of people then following and hiring quite well, and a bit more ambition and believing in who we were more, because I think the more and more we won stuff in the States, the more and more we were winning things globally, because those US multinationals trusted us more in Germany and the UK and France when
Yeah.
we were delivering on their doorstep, never mind we were already in the UK. So
Good.
by building the US, it organically built the rest in many ways, and by focusing new business as well on the right US multinationals or the right EMEA scaling companies and vice versa,
Course.
that worked well. So I think a couple of things happened. I think we got better at our ICP,
Yeah.
right? And I think ICP is two things, right? I think you can get new sales leaders coming in or CEOs that say our ICP is STEM, it's 500 to 5,000 people companies, it's they've got X number of revenue.
Topic.
There is a place for that,
Yeah.
right? But I think if you're not sitting and saying, who are my customers today? Who are my best customers today? Why are they my best customers? What problems do we solve for those customers? What roles do we fill for those customers? And what is it that's got us to this point with that particular customer? Why did they refer us? You're missing a trick, because that should be
Literally.
feeding your ICP playbook all the time. So
Literally.
I think for us it was a couple of things. We scaled the team a little bit. We doubled down on marketing,
Nice.
which I would say immediately we tried to just scale the Nicki playbook to be lead gen and realized, okay, there's an element of that could work, right? But I think one thing that we really done, and the timing of that was really, really crucial, was we hired a guy that talked about things I'd never heard of before. Things like category, right? And he'd lots of friends at the Drifts, the Gongs of the world, and we were starting to think about things that quite simply transactional recruitment agencies just don't think about.
Yeah.
Most recruitment agencies are a couple of owners and loads of 360 people that are trying to do sales and recruitment. But there is no business in the world where the sales team does recruitment and the recruitment team do sales. But for some reason in recruitment, that is the norm. So immediately by having a separate sales and recruitment team, we've got a differentiator.
I
We've
love
got more
that.
time. We've got actual roles there that people can have their focus. It's a more costly model, it's a less profitable model, but it's a better quality model and it's a better output model. So we can give a better experience just simply by being set up different, and in my opinion, better for the customer. So I would say by really doubling down on the category, and we didn't get this right, because we started off with something that led to recruitment process intelligence. And really what that was what we did. We got recruitment results through processing through data. And we tried to be cool about it, and RPI, and at one point it was almost RIP, and that would never have worked, right? RIP.com. But what we'd done is we got a real internal methodology absolutely down, and it was what we'd always done, but we got it down on paper. We got it down as a methodology. We got people believing in it. We got people practicing what they preach, and then we realized that's a rubbish name. What's better? And we turned to what was more than a hiring partner, because it just sank better with it. And the reason for that was I met a client in London for dinner. I went all the way to, I did 5 states in 6 days and met 12 clients one October, and my client had COVID, and she's like, I'm going to be in London next month, please come and meet me. And I went down and I met her, and I said, look, how's your been? How's your year been? And I said, look, if you could sum up what we are as a kind of hiring partner to you, what would that be? And she said, Nicky, you're more than a hiring partner to me.
Yeah.
And I said, hold on. And I literally phoned my CEO while I was sitting at dinner, and I said, Gavin, more than a hiring partner. And he's like, I love that. And that became our kind of new strapline internally for, what we do, how we do it, how we go, over, over deliver, how we do our awards, all those things. And the more you do those things internally, again, the better your output externally. And yeah, so I think a couple of things: playbooks for success, the right tools and technology.
Awesome.
We are probably better teched up than most tech companies,
Yeah.
and it's costly,
It's
and
costly.
it can be confusing when you've got lots of systems. So there's been lots of trial and error and things like that over the years. But I think that is what makes a good company, when you continue to innovate and get better all the time.
Yeah, I love what you say there, because like I honestly think interviewing your customers is the biggest like gap people miss. But what I used to do when I was building a sales excellence company, and I'll introduce it here at some point, but
Sure.
I used to into every quarter, I used to go through all of my sales reps lists, and I used to pick like 10 from each closed lost deals that I believe were a good ICP, that on paper, I was like, why didn't they buy? And their sales force wasn't good enough for me to be like, okay, I still don't believe that reason. So I would just call them and just be like, I'm not trying to bring you back into a sales cycle whatsoever. Just tell me like why you didn't buy us, where it like fell in the deal cycle, all of that kind of stuff. And those 3 to 5 like nuggets that they gave me was more powerful in how we scaled the business than anything else, because it meant that we could rectify it and then create key themes of where we were losing and why we were losing,
Yeah.
rather than just relying on like people's just like thought process. And that on top of interviewing like customers and why you're doing so well is probably the biggest lesson I learned when scaling my first business.
See, I love that, right? Because naturally in any business, if you've got 10 sales reps, they're all going to be different because they're 10 different people. And you can give them all the same playbook, right? And they will deliver it in a different way. But what your customer says is the same for them all,
Exactly.
right? So for me, I think what was, and again, I'm going to sound like I'm bragging here, our lost ratio is so small that when we lose something, it's typically because the client has done it themselves. Very rarely is it because they chose someone else. So there's been a lot of times I'm saying, could we charge more? Are we charging enough? Etc. Right? Those types of things. But again, let that not be the kind of focus. I think I think a big thing for me though is that visibility,
Yep.
credibility. You know, particularly in like there are some businesses where you've got 3, 6, 9, 12 month sales cycles. The touch points are ridiculous. The number of people involved are crazy. And in our embedded world where we're giving people for a period of time to solve tens, hundreds of hires, yes, that can be the case. But very often recruitment can be a transaction,
Yeah.
right? Now I hate the word transaction,
Really
right?
why.
But ultimately, if somebody loses someone from their business, they typically need to refill that tomorrow. That is just an instant need that they need sorted that they weren't typically expecting. If you're not in their mind when that problem happens, you're not getting it.
Of course.
So there's an element of how can I build up that credibility, that partnership, and I think partnership is huge to me. It really, really is huge to me. Like, not everybody is going to absolutely be your best friend and love you, right? But people do buy for people, and I think people genuinely still like to work with people. I think that's been tested today more than ever,
I agree.
right? Because people aren't just willing to spend anything to work with a friend anymore. That person needs to deliver as well. So the fact that we've been able to do that consistently over the years, honestly, I'm amazed over the past 2 years how well we've done because there has been less hiring, there's been more restructuring, there's been more leaning out, there's been AI replacing salespeople and blah blah blah
Literally.
blah blah, right? All these things that you would naturally think our sales would go down and they've went up. So I'm sitting saying to myself,
What is
why
it?
why why is that? So every time we win a new client, why? And it's amazing how somebody used to work at place X that's went to place Y that's remembered something,
Of
or
course.
I was in your process and I wasn't right for that role, but I'm hiring myself. So again, one of the biggest things we've done over the last few years is just elevate ourselves, our tone, our conversation, and the people we're speaking to. And honestly, this is where you're on the right track here because a lot of that has been through networks, the right events,
Yeah.
the right roundtables, putting yourselves in the right conversation with the right people. But again, you can only do that when you're bringing good ideas, good content, good speakers, good topics to the table.
Yeah, I love it. I think partnerships is key. Like, I honestly think it's just like with the way that organic and the way you've got AI and all the outbounds getting so crowded. So this is going to be interesting because I love this like topic. I sometimes bring up, I sometimes don't, but it's interesting because your recruitment, so you're focused on talent, right? So we as a business here, we don't over index on talent. We do it like 50-50. And what I mean by that is a lot of businesses over index on talent and forget like, I don't know, like the vehicle that surrounds them to enable them to perform.
Yep.
Like Lewis Hamilton isn't winning the F1 in like a Ford Fiesta. That's the best description I
Yeah.
can give you. That's a sporting analogy. Um,
Yep.
So when you look at like your team, I know it's separate sales and recruitment, which I love, by the way, and I think that's like a really, really key nugget for people to take away from this, because I've actually never heard of that. And I've been in this space 10 years or so, not in the recruitment space, but in like sales, go to market. So
Yep.
when you look at like your team individually or as a group on that sales side and even the recruitment side, to be honest, but what's your opinion on like that constant like coaching playbooks and just being able to get them to that next level? Because we see time and time again that we've got frontline leaders, we've got RVPs, we've got all of these people that are great leaders, but don't actually coach or help their team get to anywhere where they need to get to, or are they vehicle to their next promotion or anything like that. So obviously you're very hot on the talent side, but what is it like
Yep.
internally when you think of that coaching enhancement and like if someone's underperforming or someone's overperforming, like how do you kind of go about that?
Look, I think this is the most crucial conversation I think any leader of go-to-market is ever going to have, right? Because the idea is you're going to have a team of LeBron Jameses, a team of superstars that all, you know, smash quota every single month. But the data suggests probably 25-30% of salespeople in the UK hit target, right? So whose fault is that? We did a ton of work in SaaS over the last couple of years, and most of them were replacing CROs or sales directors. And as much as I loved picking up that business, we offer a 12 to 18 month guarantee when we hire someone, depending on level. And in that particular industry, I was more nervous, even if we hired a stud or somebody that we thought was top talent, because the infrastructure around them wasn't correct.
Yeah.
Right. So I think first and foremost, I think the VCs have got a lot to blame for that, because in the past it was throw money at it and just 10x by hiring 10 people. Right? So whoever thought that was a good idea ever should be shot, right? But at the same time, I think, to me, I did a Future of Leadership Roundtable series this year where we talked about hiring the right people and setting them up for success. So what does success look like, right? And what support do you need to get there? And what does that foundation need to be? What tools, what tech, etc. I think the next part then is the DNA of, at that point, the leadership series for me was the leadership team. But if I think about it from your go-to-market team, you're not going to have everybody up there. You almost need a little bit of hierarchy, in my opinion, because that allows people to mentor, grow from each other, learn from each other, set benchmarks. So I think it is important to have your kind of you're talking about that 50-50 in talent. I think it's important to have the people that want to come in, learn, will graft, will go out their way, will work harder, versus I've got a bit of experience, but I'm still humble with it. I think the three biggest traits for me, there's a book called The Ideal Team Player by Patrick Linkosi that is hungry, humble, people smart. And I think if you hire for people that have those three traits, you'll seldom go wrong. If they're missing one of them, there's always something that you're going to give up. But if you think about anybody that's successful, cocky people can be successful for a while, but it comes back to bite them eventually.
100%.
Right? But people that are humble typically are also then a bit more curious as well. I think the people that you need hunger, right? Quite simply, I don't know anybody in life and any that's just naturally gifted that doesn't work hard. It just doesn't happen, right? And I played football for 20 years and I was average for lots of that. But I worked my ass off, right? So that to me is just resilience built. So that's why people do like taking people from the military or sport or whatever, because they've got something in them that other people don't have, that commitment to go to the gym at 6 o'clock every morning, etc. And then there's a, it's not an IQ, but that IQ, EQ, that people smarts, that kind of a curiosity. I think you need that little bit as well to be successful. So for me, I think having a balance of a team and having a realistic path to success, realistic ramp, realistic coaching is really important. Now, I would say we are improving there, because I went on the route that a lot of people go on, where you become like salesperson, look after the sales team, team lead, sales and marketing.
I'm just like a little bit behind you on that. I did that in my early 20s. It was mental.
And I look at that and I say to myself, I was not ready. The amount of extra time I had to spend to almost convince myself I was ready, then I had to convince others. And now you're dealing with individual instances, and all
Emotions.
of a sudden you're not coaching well, but you're not hitting your own number either.
I was that person.
And I've been there, right? I have absolutely been there at times. And the only way I was able to continue to do my number was work longer hours, which then affects family life, and then the balance goes out the window. So I've managed to come out the other side of that, but a lot of that was through mentorship and making sure the right leadership decisions were good. But again, just like talking to your customers, you need to talk to your team as well and get that feedback. So I think if you hire the right people and you've got a shared sense of accountability, then you can get there. Then the other things like comp plans and work-life balance. We talk about 6 F's as solution driven. So family, fit, freedom, fulfillment, future, fortune. So if we pick up a role, it's not just about the money. What are the other elements that keep you here? When we pick up a role from a client, why are you there after 10 years? Okay, you've been there a year. Why did you join? Straight away, they know you're more interested in them than the person that just goes through the CV. But that story is what brings top talent to your business. It's not just the 5K extra, right? It's all the things around that. So I kind of I've went off topic probably a little bit there, but I can't emphasize enough that you simply can't just go, there's my playbook, there's my best salesperson. How do we multiply them? Because we don't have 3D printers for people yet, unfortunately.
I know. And do you know what's like the biggest data point other than the fact that it's astonishing how underperformance is just widely accepted still and people aren't hitting the number? But the number one thing, and I see this all the time, and you've probably seen this a million times, is when you see a sales rep from another company like crush it, like they are like a top sales rep, like they have that infrastructure, we call it like architecture around them, and then you hire them or you see them be hired in somewhere that has that or is redundant or all of that, and they just like aren't the same. And it's like, it's just literal proof that they need all of that around them in order to excel. And like the humble thing, like it's so funny because we're so similar on all of my playbooks and my teams. Like the first thing is like always be kind and humble. That's like the number one thing, like before we even go into any training, because like if you are going to become really good at sales, you're going to earn a lot of money quick and you're going to start getting a bit egotistic. And I see it all of the time. And it's shocking, right? It's like the amount you can go from X to Y financially in sales within the space of 12 months is just like no other career when you don't really need like a degree or a master's, etc. So like I agree with that. I agree with that.
See on that point, right? Having lived in the States and known a lot of people in the States, I almost feel people are prouder to be a salesperson in the States than they are in the UK, for example, right? Or Germany or Netherlands or whatever, right? Here it is almost like, see if you're in the pub and what is it you do? Oh, I'm in recruitment. All right, okay. It's like the car salesman stuff, right? If you're a salesperson in recruitment, you're like the devil, right? So it's like, how can you feel proud about that? Now, if I tell someone I'm the chief growth officer to one of my friends anyway, they're like, well, yeah, look at you, right? But it's, in the sales, it's like, I'm an SDR and I'm the proudest person on the planet, right? And I think I don't know, like there are some unbelievable SDRs and their first thought is get to AE and then AEs want to be sales. But there are people that are now carving out careers in those spaces, and I love seeing that. I really love seeing that because there is a hell of a lot of money to be made in sales and recruitment for that matter. And I think one of the parts for me, not only the resilience factor and the teamwork ethics from sport, I made good money in sport. So when I first went into this was half of what I was making, right? So even when I started doing quite well, it was only getting me back to where I was anyway. And then so it was having to set myself different goals for success. And I think that was really important for me as well individually.
Yeah, that's super interesting because I was the complete opposite. Like I went from being in debt at a student loan and I started at like 42. Yeah, like love that, honestly. It's still paying it off now. So we took it out like 0% and now it's on 6%. Thank you. I started on like 42K in London, which I thought was incredible, like straight out of uni, and then went up to 100 plus at like 23. And I was like so bad at school, riddled with ADHD. My friends were like doctors, lawyers, JP Morgan, Accenture, and I was outperforming all of them within a year. And I was like, how has this happened? But it's crazy that the States have, because I've always built companies in the States, worked with people in the States, even their base salaries are so much higher. And I get the cost of living, but it's actually like it's even in London, like the cost of living is like the same, but it's like Their base salaries when we hired a US rep to a UK was 20K base difference. It was insane. So even it's reflected on how much they earn
Yep.
compared to like the status and what it actually is. Like I used to be like, oh yeah, but my friends do law. And I'm like, yeah, but you do sales, but you 2x their income and you have a bit more flexibility than them that are in the office 24/7.
I think there's two things though, right? If you think about one of the most underrated skills in the world, it's communication,
100%.
right? You look at some of the leaders, presidents, stuff. Let's not get into politics, right? But you people that are in top positions, even if they are technically astute or they are mathematicians, if they can't communicate, you immediately go, not for me, right?
100%.
So, so for me, being able to just talk to people is a dying art, in my opinion, and it's so difficult to, you know, ask somebody to pick up the phone and make a cold call, right? I mean, that isn't 100% my forte either, right? But getting people to do that nowadays, the pain in people's faces when you ask them, tell them that's going to be a responsibility is crazy. When you know, eh, talking to people is what really drives things
100%.
forward for me.
100%. I honestly could speak about this topic for hours, but in terms of just going back to that vehicle side, when you look at internally, do you actually have like a cadence of making sure that people can get to their next position in a way that's like cool coaching, cool reviews, playbooks, education? Or is it more just like on an ad hoc basis that you'll do like a deal review and a forecasted? Like, do you have that like almost like value that coaching and getting people to where they want to get to is like a number one priority when you think of that around the talent?
I'd say over the last 12 months it's become a much bigger factor for us, because I think for quite a period of time, and then, COVID happened and
Of course.
everybody was a bit more cautious, and then after COVID you're like still being a little bit cautious or lean, and we've always wanted to be lean. We never wanted
Yeah.
recruiters on the bench. We always wanted to be the right level of busy and the right level of pressure, I suppose, on the sales side, because you might have a team of 6 or 7 salespeople responsible for keeping 50, 60 recruiters in a job, right? That's pressure.
Yeah.
Um, I think we've had tenured people, people on the team for 8 years, 9 years, 12 years, 15 years, and that's great. But we were really keen to get some new blood in as well, and get some, we do have a lead gen model now that works. We do have marketing now. We do have events. We do have
So cool.
lots of the world we could still absolutely go after. So we've not wanted to just go throw 20 people at it. We hired two, in my opinion, really, really strong salespeople this year.
Nice.
And, they can bounce off each other. They can look a step ahead and say, what are those two people ahead of them doing? And, that maybe allows myself and the CEO to be a little bit more strategic. But again, the more strategic we be, it's feeding things to the rest. So I think we have invested in some sales psychology stuff this year. I thought was awesome.
I
Um,
love that.
really, really good. A couple of, I won't say who it is, right? But if anybody wants to know, DM me, and I'll tell them, right? But these two gentlemen have worked with some of the best sales companies in the world, and although not recruitment specific, sales psychology
Right.
specific, and they just made us think about things in a whole new um, through a whole new lens, and really made us second guess ourselves, but it upped our game overnight. And we met kind of once a month as a team. How did you find out? Let's go apply it. Let's come back. Let's see how it works.
Love
And at
that.
the end of that, we were introduced from them to someone that could help us with, some of our front end messaging, calling, communication style, tone, language, specifically for recruitment as well. So the whole idea there is we turn everything of what we've done and successful in the last 8, 9 years I've been here into a repeatable, scalable playbook that we could do across industry, across sector, across level. And again, we're already seeing the fruits of that labour come off as well. So the idea for us really then is, as and when that comes up, you could add other people. You could be a bit more functionally specific. You could have people in specific countries knowing that you've got the architecture, the infrastructure behind you, but a really good ICP and I guess portfolio that you could start to pass accounts down to the team and make them successful as well. And I think that's a big part of it. I want people to come and take it. I don't want them to be handed it.
100%.
But I think it's a double-edged sword. If someone's doing well, they deserve more as well. So how do you create that
It's
type of
so,
environment?
and it's retaining top talent. Like being able to retain your top talent is one of the most like like focal point of any business. But it's so funny that you mentioned sales psychology, because I think that's just a reflection on like how almost like how you are at early adopters and kind of like what's trending, because I think that's so important. That I think in like a year, maybe even 2 years, I think the big tech companies are going to pick up on how important that's becoming, and actually understanding the psychology of why people buy. Because I've always just said people will buy from like who they like, trust, credibility, as well as like a pretty good best in class
Yeah.
sales process. But that'll win every time over someone that's just like yes, they've ticked off everything on medic or whatever, but it's just been like the most horrific process
Yeah.
and like uncomfortable and not human. So it's so interesting that you've picked up on the psychology, because we've been looking into that as well here.
It's crazy. Like, I think we've done too much this year when I analyze the year, right? Because we've changed some tech, we've adopted AI, we put a pilot team in place across the business of where could we use AI, where do we need to be human, and where can we use AI, and we've trialed more tools than anyone. But I think we finished the year in a really incredible point. Plus we've done the psychology piece, plus
So
we've done
cool.
the coaching piece and hired. So I'm like, but then I look at the end of the year and I say it's really no surprise or secret to me as to why we've then been
Cool.
successful. But I think what's really important as well is, it was really interesting. I was about 4 or 5 years in, and one of our clients tried to poach me to be their sales director at the time, and it was a big money difference, but it probably meant moving to London, and hopefully my CEO
Come
doesn't
on over.
doesn't know this, so anyway, he'll probably find out when he watches this. And my mentor at the time was a guy that kind of launched Airbnb in EMEA, and he was like, "Go for it." He's like, "You don't want to stay somewhere too long. Like the money isn't moving." And if I look, I'm so glad I stayed now, right?
Awesome.
Because just by the nature of what we do, I'm speaking to really awesome people every day. It's not the same person every day, it's different people, different industries. And honestly, I'm surrounded by people that are so much smarter and educated than I am. So I love that, right? I've always wanted to hire people that are better than me, and what can I learn from you, and what can we
We're the
learn
same
together?
person.
So, like, I've never known anybody to get demoted because they hired someone better than them. So people need to get their ego out the way and
100%.
say, how do I just, bring people with horsepower, right? And how do we do this kind of and build this together? Because you surround you, the biggest blocker in sales is the bottlenecks of the people that try and do it all themselves. So if
100%.
you are one of those people, don't lead the team,
100%.
right? Go and sell and make a fortune and enjoy being that
Which
person.
is fine.
So I think it takes a really strong leadership, and it takes someone with great self-awareness to be successful. It really does.
I don't get the whole not asking for help. No one's beneath you. I learned so much. Like, even a frontier role, which everyone calls an SDR, which I completely disagree with anyway. I'm like learning from them all the time. I want to learn from them all the time. Like, it's just like different knowledge share. Might have different credibility to the knowledge you're sharing, but that's about it. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, but I know I've taken up loads of your time. So just before we wrap, what does the future look like for you guys? Like, are you on this like massive growth trajectory? Like, are you going to like stabilize things now you've had such a crazy year of testing and piloting things, or what does that look like for you guys?
I actually think next year's really about customer centricity and execution for us, right? I mean, I think we all get used to being in Zoom and Teams, and last year more than the years before, we got back out there. And if you think about what got us to that point, it was spending time with customers.
Love it.
So we're trying to double down a little bit on the right partnerships, the Scottish enterprises, the fintech,
Nice.
cluster, whatever it may be, right? The right partnerships, the right communities, the right strategic relationships. I'll probably tell more about that in Q1.
Love it.
And I think not getting away from what got us here, right? And I think success for me is watching some of the new guys go and smashing it, right?
So
And bringing
good.
in some amazing new customers. And then the people that have been here for a while, showing what they can do with those customers and growing those relationships even more. So we've got a very realistic budget for next year, but I
Nice.
would be so surprised if we don't go and smash that again.
I love it. Honestly, I think you guys are great. I can't wait to watch your journey. I'm excited. Like the partnerships, the customer centric, and obviously the execution. So I love it. But honestly, Nikki, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on. And maybe we'll get you back in Q1.
Always ready. But no, thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Thanks, Nikki. Bye.